In a notable shift for China's economic landscape, President Xi Jinping recently convened a meeting with prominent tech industry leaders, signaling a potential thaw in the relationship between the government and the private sector. Held on February 17, 2025, this symposium, which included high-profile figures such as Alibaba's Jack Ma and Huawei's Zhengfei, is seen as a pivotal moment that may redefine the future of entrepreneurship in the country. Observers have characterized this gathering as a symbolic end to a 5-year crackdown on the tech sector, a period marked by intense regulatory scrutiny that stifled innovation and investment. Xi's remarks during the meeting emphasized that the challenges facing the private sector are localized rather than widespread, temporary rather than long-term, and surmountable rather than unsolvable. This perspective reflects a newfound recognition of the critical role that private enterprises play in driving economic growth, particularly as China's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic has been slower than anticipated. The meeting served as a platform for Xi to reassure business leaders of the government's commitment to fostering a more supportive environment for entrepreneurship. However, while the meeting has been viewed positively, it also underscored the delicate balance that entrepreneurs must navigate within China's political landscape. The seating arrangement at the event, which placed Xi at the center with various business leaders arranged in concentric circles, symbolized the hierarchical relationship between the state and the private sector. The closer one was to Xi, the more favorably regarded they appeared to be by the government. Jack Ma, who had previously faced significant backlash from regulators, was notably positioned at the outer edge of the gathering, indicating a cautious reintegration into the fold. The implications of this meeting extend beyond mere optics. Economists suggest that shifting attitudes within the government could lead to changes in local officials' interactions with private enterprises, potentially reducing the risk of extortion and fostering a more favorable business environment. Historically, the number of startups in China has plummeted from over 50,000 in 2018 to fewer than 1,000 last year, a trend that highlights the adverse effects of earlier regulatory crackdowns. If Xi's conciliatory approach translates into policy changes, it could bolster investor confidence and spur renewed interest in entrepreneurial ventures. Despite these hopeful signals, skepticism remains. The private sector's vulnerability to abrupt shifts in government policy persists, with many entrepreneurs acutely aware of the precarious nature of their relationship with the state. As economist Lizzie C. Lee noted, the whims of the Chinese Communist Party (CCP) could quickly alter the current trajectory, leaving business leaders to tread carefully as they navigate their commitments to both their enterprises and the government. Furthermore, the meeting comes at a time when China's economic recovery faces significant headwinds, including a struggling property market and the looming threat of renewed tariffs from the U.S. under President Trump, who has adopted a more aggressive stance towards China. This geopolitical tension could further complicate efforts to rejuvenate the private sector as businesses grapple with both domestic and international challenges. In conclusion, while Xi Jinping's meeting with tech tycoons represents a significant shift toward a more accommodating stance for private entrepreneurship in China, its long-term effects remain uncertain. The interplay between government policy and private enterprise will continue to evolve, with the potential for both growth and setbacks, as China seeks to foster a more vibrant economy. The challenge will be finding a balance that supports innovation while maintaining the central authority of the CCP. Future developments will likely hinge on how effectively the government can implement supportive policies and restore confidence among entrepreneurs and investors alike. In a landscape marked by political maneuvering and economic uncertainty, Chinese President Xi Jinping is making significant moves to redefine the relationship between the government and the private sector. This comes on the heels of a series of crackdowns that have left many entrepreneurs wary, as Xi recently held a high-profile meeting with top CEOs from China's private sector. The gathering aimed to signal a new direction for economic policy and to reassure business leaders about the government's intentions moving forward. During the February 2025 meeting, Xi emphasized that the challenges faced by private enterprises were localized rather than widespread, temporary rather than long-term, and surmountable rather than unsolvable. He framed the relationship between the state and business as one that should be amicable and clean. This is a notable shift from past policies where state-run sectors were often prioritized at the expense of private companies. However, this newfound openness comes with caveats. While Xi's rhetoric suggests a thaw in government relations with the private sector, the dynamic remains complex. The seating arrangement at the event hinted at Xi's continuing dominance in the relationship with the most influential figures seated closest to him, reflecting a deliberate hierarchy that underscores the importance of loyalty to the Communist Party. Among those present was Alibaba's Jack Ma, who has been gradually reintegrated into the business community after facing significant government scrutiny. Ma's presence alongside other tech leaders signals a potential easing of restrictions, but also reinforces the idea that compliance with the state remains crucial for success. Economist Lizzie C. Lee noted that the implications of Xi's meeting would resonate throughout the party state, potentially reducing the vulnerability of entrepreneurs to local extortive practices. In practical terms, this could encourage a more stable environment for private businesses, which have faced significant challenges in recent years, as evidenced by a dramatic drop in the number of new startups, from over 50,000 in 2018 to fewer than 1,000 last year. Nevertheless, the long-term stability of this new approach is uncertain. Investors may find some reassurance in Xi's recent overtures, but there remains the ever-present risk that the Chinese leadership could revert to stringent measures if deemed necessary for maintaining party control. The dichotomy of Xi's message, that businesses are vital yet must remain compliant, poses a paradox that many entrepreneurs will have to navigate carefully. As the political climate evolves, the growth of foreign direct investment in China continues to decline, having plummeted by 99% over the past 3 years, with $168 billion leaving the country last year. This trend is causing concern among policymakers as it threatens to stifle the entrepreneurial spirit that was once a hallmark of China's economic landscape. The shrinking number of foreign firms has also seen a reduction in employment opportunities, which has dropped to fewer than 10 million, its lowest level in over a decade. Additionally, the geopolitical landscape is becoming increasingly fraught, particularly concerning Taiwan. China's assertive posture under Xi, coupled with the U.S. shifting its foreign policy under a new administration, raises the stakes further. Taiwan remains central to Xi's agenda, as he views its reunification as a critical step towards cementing China's status on the global stage. The ongoing political warfare and misinformation campaigns aimed at undermining Taiwan's sovereignty illustrate the lengths to which Beijing is willing to go to achieve its objectives. The interplay between Xi's domestic policies and aggressive foreign strategy will likely continue to shape the trajectory of China's economy and its relationship with global markets. With the potential for increased tensions surrounding Taiwan and an ever-evolving narrative of nationalism, the world watches closely to see how these developments will unfold. In conclusion, while Xi's recent overtures to the private sector may signal a new chapter in China's economic policy, the underlying complexities and risks remain. As the government seeks to balance control with economic vitality, the outcomes of these strategies will not only affect China's entrepreneurs but will also have far-reaching implications for global economic dynamics. The international community remains at a crossroads as it contemplates the future of its relationship with a China that is simultaneously seeking to assert its dominance and navigate the challenges of a rapidly changing world order. In a complex interplay of economic ambition and consumer sentiment, China's aspiration for a 5% growth in its economy appears increasingly tenuous. Despite the government's efforts to bolster confidence, key indicators suggest that consumer enthusiasm is faltering. This dynamic has been underscored by a series of high-profile speeches and strategic meetings from Chinese leadership. Particularly President Xi Jinping's recent address aimed at revitalizing the private sector. At a symposium featuring China's leading entrepreneurs, Xi asserted the critical role of the private economy in driving the nation's modernization efforts. Practice has proven that the private economy is a vital force in advancing Chinese-style modernization, he declared, emphasizing a long-term commitment to supporting private enterprises. This sentiment resonated through state media, which enthusiastically echoed Xi's message, reinforcing the notion that private businesses are essential for sustainable development and technological innovation. However, the backdrop to this optimism is a troubling reality. Recent reports indicate that foreign direct investment in China has plummeted, with figures showing a staggering 99% decline over the past 3 years, leading to the exodus of $168 billion in capital just last year. This withdrawal of foreign interest highlights a growing perception of instability in the Chinese market, exacerbated by a series of government crackdowns that have targeted key sectors including technology and education. Consequently, many entrepreneurs and potential investors are left grappling with uncertainty, further dampening the appetite for new ventures. The government's mixed signals have created an environment where the private sector feels both supported and scrutinized. While Xi's meeting with top CEOs, including Alibaba's Jack Ma, suggests a thaw in relations post-crackdown, the underlying tension remains palpable. Xi's remarks that the challenges facing the private sector are localized rather than widespread seem overly optimistic to some analysts, who argue that the systemic issues affecting consumer confidence and entrepreneurship are far more extensive. Moreover, the cultural shift towards state employment over private entrepreneurship is becoming increasingly pronounced, with the allure of secure government jobs overshadowing the risks associated with private enterprise. The number of applicants for civil service positions continues to rise despite a declining youth population. This trend raises significant concerns about the future of innovation and economic resilience in a country that has long prided itself on its entrepreneurial spirit. As China navigates this precarious economic landscape, the question remains whether the government's recent overtures towards the private sector can translate into tangible benefits for consumers and investors alike. The stark reality is that consumer confidence is not easily restored through rhetoric alone. It will be crucial for the Chinese government to not only maintain an accommodating stance towards private businesses but also to implement policies that genuinely enhance the operating environment. The path to revitalizing consumer confidence and fostering a robust private sector will require more than symbolic gestures. It will necessitate a concerted effort to stabilize the economic landscape and ensure that the private sector can thrive alongside state enterprises. As the year progresses, all eyes will be on how these developments unfold, particularly in light of ongoing geopolitical tensions and domestic economic pressures. In a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape, the People's Liberation Army (PLA) of China finds itself embroiled in a profound leadership crisis that raises critical questions about its military readiness and operational effectiveness. Despite boasting a formidable array of advanced technology, including state-of-the-art aircraft carriers and stealth fighters, the PLA's leadership is increasingly perceived as politically constrained, untested in combat, and burdened by internal insecurity. Historically, the PLA has not engaged in significant warfare since its ill-fated conflict with Vietnam in 1979, which exposed severe deficiencies in training and combat preparedness. This prolonged absence from real battle scenarios has resulted in a generation of generals who, despite their high ranks, lack hands-on combat experience. The PLA's last major engagement left it struggling against a battle-hardened Vietnamese force, a stark contrast to the recent combat experiences of military powers like the United States, Russia, and India. The current structure of military leadership within the PLA is heavily influenced by political loyalty rather than battlefield success. Under President Xi Jinping's administration, promotions within the military have become increasingly tied to ideological conformity, with a 2024 Jamestown Foundation report revealing that nearly 40% of PLA training time is devoted to political indoctrination. This shift has resulted in a military leadership that is skeptical of its own operational commanders and their ability to execute missions under the pressures of warfare. Many officers lack the ability to make independent decisions under the pressure of war, writes Dennis J. Oblasco, a retired U.S. Army officer and China analyst. Further complicating matters, Xi Jinping's aggressive anti-corruption campaign has led to the purging of numerous high-ranking officers, fostering an environment of fear and hesitation within the ranks. This has not only created internal mistrust but has also led to a culture where political survival takes precedence over military preparedness. As noted in a Rand Corporation report, the frequent turnover in PLA leadership has resulted in paralysis in decision-making, particularly among mid- and high-ranking officers. In stark contrast to the PLA, military forces in India and other nations maintain a steady state of readiness through ongoing real-world engagements and exercises. Indian generals possess extensive battlefield experience, having participated in various conflicts and peacekeeping missions, contrasting sharply with the PLA's scripted training exercises that fail to mimic the chaos of real combat. The PLA's reliance on rehearsed scenarios where enemy forces are instructed to lose undermines its ability to adapt to unexpected situations in genuine conflicts. As military experts assess the implications of these leadership deficiencies, the situation becomes particularly concerning in the context of potential conflict, especially with a combat-hardened adversary like India. Experts have highlighted that the PLA faces significant force imbalances when compared to Indian troops stationed in contested border regions. Despite China's significant investments in military modernization, these foundational challenges remain unaddressed, revealing that a military cannot be strong if its leaders are weak. Looking ahead, the PLA's leadership crisis presents a critical liability in any future conflict scenarios. While the Chinese military may parade its advanced weaponry, the harsh reality is that in the theater of war the generals may grapple with a more formidable adversary, their own inexperience and the systemic issues plaguing their command structure. The question remains whether the PLA can overcome these challenges and evolve into the world-class military it aspires to be, or whether it will continue to struggle under the weight of its internal crises. As global tensions rise and military postures shift, particularly concerning Taiwan, the implications of the PLA's leadership dynamics will be crucial to monitor. The interplay of military capability, political loyalty, and actual combat readiness will ultimately shape China's strategic decisions in the coming years, making the PLA's internal evolution a focal point of international concern. The implications for international relations and regional stability are profound. The term wolf warrior diplomacy was coined in reference to a specific strain of Chinese foreign policy characterized by its confrontational nationalistic tone. First popularized in a 2015 action film, this style has been emblematic of China's recent diplomatic efforts, which aim to assert its power and resilience on the global stage. High-profile examples abound, such as the controversial statements made by Chinese officials that have garnered significant backlash from Western nations. This aggressive rhetoric serves not only to provoke adversaries but also to galvanize domestic support, reinforcing the narrative of a strong and assertive China under President Xi Jinping. Lacked substantive policy discussion but was designed to resonate with a domestic audience. Vance's comments underscored the deepening rift between U.S. and European perspectives on democracy and governance, with his incendiary remarks aimed at igniting a sense of division that mirrors the tactics of China's diplomatic wolves. The implications of this evolving diplomatic style are significant. As Vance and his counterparts engage in this combative rhetoric, it highlights a shift in U.S. foreign policy where domestic political considerations increasingly dictate international strategy. This trend is particularly concerning in the context of U.S.-China relations, where mutual understanding and cooperation are essential for addressing global challenges such as climate change and security threats. Simultaneously, China appears to be recalibrating its own approach. Reports indicate that Beijing may soon lift its ban on the K-wave, or Korean popular culture, which had been in place since 2017 in response to South Korea's deployment of the THAAD missile defense system. This shift from a wolf warrior stance to a more conciliatory smile diplomacy reflects China's recognition of the need to strengthen ties with South Korea, particularly in light of escalating tensions with the U.S. This potential thaw in relations could signal a broader trend of China seeking to mend fences with its neighbors while maintaining its assertive posture against Western influence. As these dynamics unfold, the potential for a grand bargain looms large. Analysts suggest that Trump's administration may inadvertently create openings for China to expand its influence, particularly if it continues to prioritize transactional relationships over traditional alliances. Trump's approach to foreign policy, often criticized for its unpredictability, presents both risks and opportunities for Beijing. A possible rapprochement could emerge, driven by mutual interests in trade and geopolitical stability, but it remains to be seen whether such a realignment will occur. In conclusion, the interplay between U.S. and Chinese diplomacy is at a critical juncture. The provocative tactics of wolf warrior diplomacy, coupled with the confrontational rhetoric from the U.S., underscore a growing divide that could reshape the global order. As both nations navigate this complex landscape, the potential for future cooperation or conflict remains uncertain. The international community will be watching closely as these developments unfold, with the hope that dialogue and understanding can prevail over division and hostility.